right. And
We're live.
we're live. So,
How people all.
we are, where's my gap?
Guys, we're live.
We are live, we are into decorum. And we have Tanya Morehouse. Tanya, I guess there is I don't even know that I've seen it, an amendment being floated for some clarity. And I know that we've had communications from the auditor's office for the Burlington waterfront TIF. And with that, we'd hear from you. We will hear from Burlington, and we either will or will not put that on the miscellaneous tax bill by Friday. And we'll see where it goes. Okay.
Okay. Tanya Morehouse, I'm the Chief Auditor for the State Auditor's Office. Thanks for inviting us in to speak today. Do you control sharing the screen?
I can. Charlotte can give it to you.
Okay. Did that work?
No.
No? How's that?
There you go. All right, we've got it.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to talk about an issue that we flagged in our 2023 audit of the waterfront TIF district. We actually didn't bring this issue forward this session, but we did flag it in our audit. And so I'm just here to tell you why we flagged it and why we think it would be a good idea to have some specificity around what the retention percentage should be and also the date to use for base value in the tax increment calculation. So the issue that we flagged in the audit is that we had concern that Act 134, which is the act that extended the period to retain both municipal and education tax increment until 2035, doesn't address what the retention percentages should be for either of those, and also doesn't establish a date to use for base value. And I know David White testified yesterday, and his perspective is that it doesn't need to be addressed because it's in law, and Act 134 didn't amend that law, so just go with what is in law already. However, why did we have this concern when we were doing the audit? Since 2009, every extension and change related to tax increment for the waterfront TIF district has been in session law. Some of the more recent session law changes do reference previous session law and amend the previous session law, but other more recent session law does not. And this is where our concern arose from. So Act 45, back in 2011, that is what specified that the education fund had to be paid 25% of any new education tax increment. That session law also stated that the payment would only occur until 2025. Act 134, which is the one that currently extends the retention for those three parcels until 2035, doesn't amend Act 45 to specify that the payment to the education fund needs to continue through 2035. So that was what drove our concern, which is that someone could look at these two pieces of information and say, well, Act 45 says the payment only has to happen until 2025. Act 134 doesn't say anything about a payment to the education fund.
So we
mhm.
say that the 25% payment continues to 35, that gives the clarification.
You could, yes, you could say something along those lines.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Um, but I would caution against carrying forward the current calculation. And I'll talk about that in a couple of slides if that's okay. I just wanted to lay out for you maybe what some different options are for the percentages. So, the TIF in the beginning, it retained 100%.
Right.
And then, they asked for an extension to do more debt. And I think part of that kind of negotiation was, well, fine, but you need to make a payment to the education fund. And that's where they were only allowed to retain 75% for certain properties. And they had to make the 25% payment to the education fund. Just for context, and so that it's fresh for you all TIF districts are created after July of 2006 could retain up to 75% and were required to retain an equivalent percent of municipal tax increment. As of 2017, any new TIF districts may only retain 70% of education tax increment, and they have to contribute 85% of municipal tax increment. So just switching to the base value, some considerations about which date might be appropriate. It could be the creation date of the TIF district, which was 1996. It could be 2010, which is when they first were required to make that 25% payment to the education fund, and that date is used for part of the calculation that generates that payment. Or it could even be 2016, which is when the legislature authorized the city to extend the tax increment retention period for the 3 parcels.
May I ask you a question on that, Tanya?
Yeah.
My limited experience with TIFs when I was on the South Burlington City Council, I thought I remembered the original tax value being set by when we started thinking on debt for the TIF district. Is that a mistake?
That's when the tax increments gets retained. So the creation date is the OTV date, but they actually start to retain tax increment after the first debt is issued. So that's what starts the 20-year period of retention. So I'm actually going to advance to my last slide because I feel like we have that question kind of hanging over our heads about the current calculation. So David White testified that the city had just planned to kind of roll forward with the existing tax increment calculation, but it has been very complicated for the city to administer because there's 2 different OTVs used in the calculation and there's 2 different retention percentages. And when we did our audit in 23, we found that the automated process, which determines the payment to the education fund, didn't work correctly for multiple years and resulted in underpayment to the education fund. So our recommendation would be that they not carry forward the current calculation, regardless of what the retention percentage is going to be and what base value is used. They shouldn't have kind of a 2-step calculation. It just is very difficult to administer in the current accounting system. The other concern that I wanted to bring to your attention is that the former mall garage property, which is one of the 3 parcels that they'll be using to calculate increment, was incorrectly excluded from OTV for the entire life of the TIF. So basically, their increment was overstated throughout the whole way. And that should be corrected in the base value established for the extended tax increment period. Sometimes some of these like miscellaneous details get lost, but this is one that shouldn't get forgotten. So right now, essentially, the OTB has zero value for the former mall garage property. But it was a taxable property back in 1996 when the TIF was established, so it should have been included. Okay, I went through that kind of fast. Any questions or anything you want to go back to?
We have that, you said that to us, right?
This presentation, I haven't yet. I just put it together this afternoon, so I'll send it to you.
If you send that over to us, it will give us base to work on.
Okay. I can definitely do that.
Well, you don't have to do it right away because we're not going to take it up at 20 minutes apart tonight. Have we got any questions for Tanya?
I think that it would be helpful, Tanya, if in what you send us, if you're able to do even on a pro forma basis, anything that would give us an indication of what the effect would be in terms of additional monies coming in the state, and depending upon which one of these methods we choose, both in the short run and the long run. In other words, where, if there are any adjustments to be made, where are they going to be made? What's the effect going to be on money coming in to the state? And what's the effect going to be to money coming in and presumably out to the city?
I can do that. That involves estimating what the future value of these three properties is going to be. And I have information about what the city had estimated a couple of years ago. What would be helpful is if the city provided kind of a pro forma based on their most recent knowledge. But I mean, I can do it, but just know that my information is a couple of years old on what they believe these properties will be
Just a
valued.
starting point, if we ask
Yeah.
that of you, and perhaps we ask the same thing, or they could produce, ask the city, that way we have both perspectives, and we understand there's a sort of a rebuttable presumption that whatever anybody provides us is a best estimate at this point rather than actual.
Yeah, I just think they have the most up-to-date information about what the development is going to entail, and what they think the ultimate value will be, and when it's going to come online as well. I know the South Tower is constructed and it's in their grand list. I know the North Tower is being constructed, and the last estimate that I heard was that it would be open and ready for business the end of 2027, which would mean it would be on the grand list in for April 1, 2028, which is actually FY29, which actually leaves them very little time to retain increment on that, which makes me wonder how they plan to pay for their debt, actually. And I know that David White said they were projecting a $4 million surplus, but I haven't seen the calculation that supports that, and I wonder if maybe that's a little old at this point. I'm just not sure.
When do you plan to audit again?
So we're supposed to audit 3 years after they issue the debt for this district. They have issued interim debt, and basically they have reissued it every year. So they issued it in 23 because that was their deadline. It matured in 24. They took out another short-term note and so on. They've been doing that, and I understand that they're doing that because they're not entirely sure about how much value was going to be created for these three parcels, and also when the construction really would start for the reconnection of the streets. So it makes sense that they did a short-term note as opposed to, a longer-term bond. But at this point, they have not issued their final kind of long-term debt.
Then we need to move on, but
Yeah, go ahead.
two quick questions. One, I don't hear from you that they are breaking the law. If by anything, I think there was ambiguity because they were one of the first TIFs and that there's conflicting interpretation of the legislation. I'm inclined to just let them grandfather in their interpretation of the increment proportions. That seems fair, and I'm not hearing you say that that's not an option. My question more, if you want to react to that, you can, but on the OTV value, do you have reason to believe that they aren't correcting through the oversight that Pepsi's giving them? Are they not now including that 847 and correcting it? Are you suggesting the legislature needs to direct them to include this original parcel value in their calculations?
When we did recommendation follow-up in 2025 on our audit, they had not corrected it. I don't know if they have subsequently corrected it. They may have. But they hadn't as of the end of 2025.
I just don't know if that would require legislative action if it's just that it was an oversight that they need to correct within the bounds of the existing system.
This is, they
Decision was-
disagreed with us on this issue, and we
Yes.
pushed back. So all I can tell you is they had not made the correction as of the end of 2025, which was just a few months ago.
Should then I look into this, get back to you.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
I
Okay.
can touch base with Jesse.
And us would be helpful.
You want to use more time on this?
We got this. We're gonna do it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Please,
Thank
please,
you.
let's talk more about Burlington TIF.
okay, we have one other thing, which is the yield bill.
Oh, not for me. You're all set?
You.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All the information, it would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I will send you the presentation, and I'll send my version of the pro forma, that Senator Brock asked for.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, I'm not sure. We've got 949, the yield. The choices we've got are how we dole out the $100 million plus or minus. Do we do it in 1 year? Do we do it in 2 years? I believe originally it was 3 years, which the proposal, which took us up to when, according to Act 73, we are going into the foundation formula. The thought was it would step schools up or down into the formula. The House, the governor's recommend was to use it all this year. The House landed on 2 years. I've asked for 2 amendments. I think we have to make adjustments in some of them based on the budgets, right, that got passed in March. That changes some of the numbers that we'll have to adjust. And then the other one was, if we want to change it from 2 years, we have to make an amendment to what we would want to do. And I don't think that hearing any more testimony is probably going to change any. It's
Not necessary.
so I'm looking to get this moving, and Julia, you have an amendment, or John has both amendments? John has both amendments.
And I have an Ed Fund Outlook that includes both potential amendments.
Okay,
And it adds one, Julie Richter, JFO, it adds one new column, so to the chair's point,
can you share that with us?
Yeah, you're gonna do that right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
then we at least know what the numbers are.
Sorry.
It, I think gets big enough to read up there.
Yeah,
On the iPad, it's a little challenging. Not as bad as that 8.220 bill that was very challenging to read.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can do that.
Okay. Director, Joint Fiscal Office, sharing my screen. There's one document posted on the committee page under my name. The Education Fund Outlook. It is very similar to yesterday's, but I included a new column. So yesterday we walked through column A. We talked about column B, this is the house construct. Column C is the house construct, but changing it to better reflect the budget data. So as you'll recall, because there's updated budget information, the house construct solved for a uniform average bill change, but then when we put in the updated budget information, it no longer was uniform. So all column C does is it recalculates the rate and yields so that there would be a uniform average bill change across all three classes, and that would be 6.7%. So the numbers that are included in the amendment under John's name, and I'll let John speak to the amendment, but the numbers that are included there for that half buy down come from column C of the outlook. The full buy down, so that's using the entirety of the 105 million next year in fiscal year 2027, can be seen in column E. So the numbers in column E match the full buy down amendment. Numbers in column C match that half buy down amendment. And there is, I don't want to steal John's thunder. There is a second part of both amendments as well, beyond the numbers.
Okay.
For Jeff's.
You can steal it.
Wait, can you repeat what you just said? The numbers in column C are the half.
Correspond with the half and the E is the full. Yeah. And looking at it in, with the updated budget information and intuitively looking at it, that makes sense, right? Because the more money that you use in one year, the less an increase you see in that year.
Okay. So when we get to D and E, those have the updated numbers with the voted budget.
Actually, columns B through E all have the updated budget information. I put that up here in the header. Really, the big piece is that the House was using old budget information. They proposed a uniform average bill change. When we put in the new budget information, it no longer was uniform average bill change. So if you all were to say we want to go with exactly the same policy construct that the House proposed, you would need to change the numbers to match the House construct for uniform bill change. I'm not saying that's what you want to do or not.
I believe the chair mentioned this a couple of times that this is the average property tax increase, but there will still be some districts with higher and lower. Do you have any characteristics of the variations, what the standard deviation is from the mean? How many are going to be above at the House construct at 7%? How many are going to have above 10% versus a lot lower, what the dispersion is of the?
So the challenge is, the short answer is no, I don't have that information available. And the reason is because when we're looking at the average bill change, we're not just looking at the change in rates, but we're also looking at the change in property value and the change in income. So you'll think about the fact that property tax bill is based off of the district's spending decisions, the statewide yield, property value of that taxpayer, and if they're income sensitized, how much they're income sensitized. And when looking at the average bill change, how that changes year over year. So even looking at a single town, like even if we were looking at South Burlington, there would be different experiences.
So that 3.6 takes into account the property tax credit?
Yes,
Okay.
all of these take into account the property tax credit of 134.2 million.
Okay, so the choice is if we don't use any of last year's set aside, we are looking at approximately 10% average, which means some people are gonna be looking at 14 or 15. If we spread it over 2 years, we're looking at 6.7
Correct.
average, which means there's gonna be some people around that 10, 11 mark
Or higher,
or higher
and you will have lower as well.
and lower.
Mhm.
So no worries about lower. If we use it all in 1 year, we are at a little over 3.5, which means that some people will have a minimal increase. Other people will have a noticeable increase, but probably not double digit. That would be the outlier. That 3.6% is enticing, except next year, we're not going to have $1 million in carryover, not unless 100 million. We strike oil into the election flame, but all things going as normal, we'll be lucky if revenues hold from this year and expenses, I think. I'm not looking forward to white heap season next year, unless something really changes on the international scene, but fuel prices tend to fire inflation, and I think I'm not looking forward to a huge surplus, which means next year people are going, you're probably all going to see a double-digit increase, even if taxes come in flat. Their budgets come in flat, which, given they put fuel in their tanks and buses and they buy health insurance, so there are no easy choices, but we are fortunate to have to make them. Discussion, straw poll.
I support E. And the reason I support E is all that money's gonna go into taxpayers' pockets. If we split it up, half will go into taxpayers' pockets, half will go into school district budgets. So I support E.
Split it up.
No, I said I support E.
The whole budget.
That's fine.
Half of what you need, half will go into school district.
Yeah,
budgets.
that's
And everything
It gets calculated into yield. It signals to, it inflates the yield. When the tax letter comes out, it signals to school districts to spend.
That's right. If it's sitting in there, it's counted in the second first letter, right?
Correct.
Section 2, that's right.
I'll go, I'm supportive of the full buy down, not necessarily for the same exact reasons, though I think that's a credible argument. I think right now people are feeling the impacts of inflation and the cost of gas and we're still reeling from property tax increases for the last few years. But I think I know it puts us in a worse line for next year without this buy down. I think what the voters are asking for is help from Montpelier to get lower property taxes. So I support the full buy down.
If
I won't
we,
make this.
Okay, you please. Cheers.
last year we used was is it 77 million was that? I'm trying to find it and on the line is.
Yeah,
77.8.
yeah, last year there was 77.8 million of one-time general fund used in FY 26. And there was also the 43 million Ed Fund surplus.
Bigger surplus this year.
So this year, where's that 43?
So if you look all the way down at the bottom
So
of that.
this year it's 22.3.
Correct.
Okay.
And all constructs B through E use that 22 million of Ed Fund surplus entirely for buying down FY 27. That's a policy choice.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, part of the reason why the increase this year, regardless of what scenario we use, is larger is because we used the full amount last year. We like inflated it this year because of using the full buy down last year. And
We don't, like, we always do that. We always bring it on thing.
exactly, and you know, last year I was trying to make the argument that we split it in half so that we could save some for this year and we would have had more to spend this year and a lower percentage this year. And I'm concerned about this like constant buying down. It puts our school districts in a really difficult position because it inflates the percentage increase in the next year. Because we've used general fund to buy it down and it sort of puts them behind the 8 ball every year. And you know, that the using the half-seas option at least does that less. And keeps the 52 million for next year. To the chair's point is that we may not have a surplus at all next year. So spreading it out over 2 years helps keep it a little bit more level for people instead of having a spike for people.
I'm in favor of C. I think schools and districts are doing a really good job of trying to lower their spending. I hear what Senator Beck is saying. At the same time, I don't think that there's any district in the state that feels, even if there's a reserve, that they can spend wantonly. I think everyone's trying to be careful. And I agree that I'm concerned about next year. And I think having a little pad, it will be extremely important given the federal and state issues and inflation. So I'm gonna see.
Anybody else want to chime in? Senator Maddox?
Yeah, I'm in the E column camp. What's that?
Okay,
And the reason why is because I saw it this year when one of the schools' failed budgets went down. They put back out the vote the same exact budget because of updated information from Montpelier. And that will show that your tax rate comes down because the yield changes. And they submitted the same exact budget to be voted on. And that if we put $52 million into next year's December 1 letter, it's just going to be gobbled up, like Senator Beck said.
Can I ask Julie a question to that point? Madam Chair.
yes.
Okay.
Julie.
So
There.
this construct, the bill specifically says to put the $52 million into the calculation of the yield for next year, the December 1 letter, correct?
Yeah, so the December 1 letter has all of those statutory modeling parameters, the JFO and consensus. And the language we need to know how should we treat that 50 million, the December 1 letter. And the way that this is drafted, which is consistent with the prior tax rate offset reserve, is for the full 52 million to be considered to uniformly lower property taxes.
Did we do that this year? Did we do that this year? We
Well,
didn't have
this year
the
we
same-
didn't have a tax rate offset reserve, but
Yeah,
I don't remember which year. A recent year, there was the 13 million tax rate offset reserve, where 13 million had been set aside for taxes.
Mhm.
And there was the same provision where we should include it in the calculating of the yield for this longer.
So is there a way to do it? So, because I hear Senator Matos's point, is there a way to do the halvesies option, but not specify that the 52 million is to be calculated so it doesn't incentivize school districts from doing that?
I would say, I would defer to John from a legal perspective. I would say from a fiscal perspective, absolutely. And it would need to be specified how the December 1 letter should take into account the 52 million. So JFO and tax would need to know the
Right.
52 million should not be considered for the purpose of calculating December 1 letter. Right.
I'm starting to lose committee members. John, have we got any more questions for Julia? Because John, I know, has some amendments drafted.
Well, I think this is an important point to
I think it
understand
is.
before
What
we
I want to know is, would anyone's vote change if we could find a way to put that 52 million into an untouchable vault for next, if we say it's untouchable, we probably do it. My gut feeling is it's not gonna change.
About what that 52 million is. I don't think you can write it a different way. I think the signal is out there. See what that 52 million is used for.
I think what it would look like could be that this is the yield, but there's already $52 million to buy it up.
So do the calculation and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
But that's what happens anyway at the beginning of the session when the governor says, I want to put $100 million into. Is school districts make decisions based on that, even if it's not in the calculation. I think that's a really good point. So how do we prevent that from happening? But by not including that in the calculation and not necessarily saying, you know, this 52 million, this reserving it, but not necessarily reserving it for buy down.
Okay. This is all on YouTube, so it's out there. Well, that there is 52 million sitting on the bottom line.
But I think it makes a difference in the December 1 letter.
It does.
In the
It's
sort of
not-
messaging of the December
it's
1
not-
letter
Yeah.
and what school districts are told. And I'm, you know,
Technically, is it our money? I mean, it's a transfer from the general fund, so if they only transfer over 52 million. There's not 52 million sitting in the ed fund, is there?
So if the budget were to not transfer the full 105 million and were to only transfer half, and the other half would remain in the general fund. I'll remind the committee that the big bill always has a contingency list.
That's right.
And then after the contingency list is met, and I don't remember off the top of my head, perhaps Chris does or someone else in the room, but there's like waterfall mechanisms as to how that general fund surplus.
Or it is scooped
dedicated.
up by the administration in unspent unreserved funds. And
I mean, if you put it in the ed fund and you don't use it this year, it just shows up on the bottom line next year.
Correct.
Is where it show up.
yeah, but if there's specific language that you don't use it in the calculation of the yield for the December 1 letter, then the yield will not be set using it
but
That's true.
everyone knows.
until
Yeah,
we
everybody knows what's there.
And you get 6.7%.
We'll behave accordingly.
I am reading this, that we're not changing votes. So I'm gonna see if John,
Hello.
I need a motion, so we find out
Well-
if John has an amendment.
I'm just curious what. You said there's two-parter, didn't want to spoil it. What's the second part?
I can spoil it, which
I'd
is
love
not
to.
spoiling it, because I'll be describing it. Yeah, I'll come up there.
One spoiler, I don't know about this one, I don't think.
I think you did.
I do.
Yes. Hello. I am John Gray, the Office of Legislative
It's
Counsel.
drier than yesterday.
Sure I am. Yeah. I got it.
Oh my goodness.
Fully stopped.
You are all set.
Are you leaving?
All right, oh my gosh.
I'm gonna pull up the section, that is being referenced here, so I'm gonna screen share. First, I wanted to show you something fun from my perspective. Oh, no, I've shared my whole screen. Don't laugh at me, staff. Okay. Let's make this bigger. So Charlotte helpfully labeled these, the different alternative drafts that we have here, half buy downs and full buy down. And you can imagine me yelling while you read these because they're in all caps, so I like that.
That's right.
In both options are this second instance of amendment where it's set within the yield bill varies based on which version you choose, whether the half or full buy down. But it is an amendment to the excess spending exclusions. This, as I understand it, came from discussions in the money chairs.
Oh,
So,
there,
yep,
yes, this is, I didn't know that's where we were gonna do this. There was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we excluded, I'll let you explain
Yep.
it from, excess spending.
so I think it was the 2024 yield bill, I believe, that did this. It also, the 2024 yield bill, I believe, also removed the suspension of the excess spending penalty, which had been imposed in Act 127 back in 2022. At that time, there had been a long list of exclusions from the excess spending penalty. We've discussed some of this in the 220 context that had been reduced down to capital construction bonds approved before a particular date. What was selected at that time was those approved prior to July 1, 2024. And what I heard today is to bump this back an additional 6 months. So bonds approved by voters prior to January 1, 2025. So that is what you see here. It's the same exclusion from the calculation, but it's an extension. I don't know the practical impact. Some discussion earlier today.
I was told there was one town that got caught in a really financially difficult situation because I think they were in process and maybe just missed that deadline. It was,
And Julie may have more to say on this, but my understanding is that maybe this only picks up Colchester, who I think is not at the excess spending threshold, if I recall.
Yeah, I've heard that this refers to Colchester. I can't confirm that. And just because I would need more time, but Colchester is not hitting the excess spending penalty threshold in FY27. So by including this, there would be no substantive impact on the FY27 rates and yields because they're not hitting the excess spending threshold. So it doesn't matter what's exempt.
Why are we including this in here? It seems like it's more than a technical thing, and this doesn't do it for, like, in the S220 bill, that was all bond, right? All approved bonds that we had there.
So if we don't add S220, which I do support doing, but if it's not added, would I be able to ask, and I know you're not parliamentarians, but if this was included in there, would then that make the conversations about the excess spending threshold, including language in S220, germane to any committee of conference?
I guess I don't exactly know the answer to that. The way that I think about committee of conference working is just you can only vary on points of disagreement. And then the real concern is that you can vary on anything if you would like to. You just raise the possibility of an objection on the floor. So if you reach a committee of conference and have sufficient points of disagreement, you can include,
So I'll restate what I said yesterday. I do support bringing S220 into the yield bill because I think they are part and parcel for this broader discussion about education spending and our property tax bill.
I don't know why this just changed from 2024 to 2025, but I don't know why we're even putting a date in there at all. We're gonna have an excess spending threshold. I think we're excluding bond payments. Period.
yeah,
We don't right now. We just do it till 2024. Those approved in
Right,
2024.
I'm just saying that I don't know if anybody backed the bond payment this last year, but why would they receive different treatment than somebody that passed the bond payment 2 years ago or 10 years ago?
Which is what we did at S220.
yeah, I was just told that Colchester, some reason with the timing, got caught. But I don't have any details.
It seems odd that we would move this for 6 months for one school district. Then if we moved it another 6 months, I think there's another school district that would get in. And then another 6 months, there's another school district that would get in. So I mean, to your point, if we're gonna change it, then let's just change it for everybody
And no one
instead of putting
staff
it in
has
for
any
one school district.
information than that.
I just got an email
Doing things.
And I was asked to insert it, but I was told that it's one town, and apparently there was testimony of ways and means. All right, so maybe we won't vote on this tonight. We will have somebody from Ways and Means come down tomorrow, first thing, and tell us about it. Would that work? No?
Just in terms of just a general process and timing,
Yeah.
8950, the transformation bill is on the floor tomorrow
Oh,
and the House floor starts at 1,
Oh.
so
we're
just in
not
terms of
gonna get
scheduling.
Anybody. Never mind Representative Kornheiser. So we can take this on faith and help out one town. Which means that that means it's fair game for a committee of conference. And if we get information and decide we hate what we do, we can go into committee of conference, stomp our feet and say we want it out.
Could we solve the problem by adding our 220 language, which also. So it would solve the date issue and also put that
Oh,
check in there with the.
When he hasn't passed, so that would solve that problem.
I don't think it's fair to put all of S 220 in this bill, that they're working on it over in the House.
They are.
I am losing my voice. And it doesn't, it's. I don't think that it's fair to put all of S 220 in this bill.
Okay. At this point, I have no motion on the floor to discuss. And it is 5:15. So is anyone ready to make a motion? And the motion would be to amend. Well, no, John, do you have an amendment that would add 220 to this?
I do not. I don't have that.
All right, so you haven't been asked to do that. Is there going to be a motion to put 220 on?
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make that motion. I would say the following, though. I understand from hallway conversations and something in the Vermont public that the tax department, I believe Jake Feldman had some recommendations on the 220 language. So we could certainly take the 220 that we passed, and then that could come out in the next few steps. But I think there's recommendations on when the appeals process might have occurred. So I don't know if we have time for all that. If you want a motion, I will give it to you now. I just didn't want to not say that.
If we're changing wording, I think if that motion passes, we could update it in the committee of conference. I'm sure if we add that on, it will guarantee a committee of conference.
And we said updated in a committee and then.
And we could have updated in a committee amendment on it.
Is this a motion for the full committee report or just an amendment to then have John draft it? What would you like?
I think the amendment would be to add S 220 to what is this bill number? 949.
I will, go ahead.
And delete the part about the
Right.
July.
You would need to.
Yeah.
About July.
About the
Yeah.
exclusion from there, it's a spending date because it would replace that.
Oh,
way of-
yes, that 220 would be, so
I don't want to make that mistake, essentially. We also need 2 separate effective dates, I think.
and we are not going to get a clean copy of this tonight, are we?
No, but you can, it's not hard to imagine what it would.
And I think we can think. No, secretary's car is still there, but I told them we weren't gonna vote anything out because there's been a couple of wrenches dropped, so I don't know that they're up there. We'd have to hold this till tomorrow.
I don't see an issue tomorrow.
So-
Can we just wait a day? I don't want to vote on something we don't have a draft on. We don't have everybody here.
I think in fairness, we can get the draft, get what you want, get the updated language. We'll give John a chance to draft it.
Yep.
When he's awake and not in the middle of the night, and then we will vote this out first thing tomorrow.
Is there not a way that we could talk about a compromise that could get everybody in the committee on board?
Think we can,
It feels to me like we're heading to this point where we've been before, where people put their foot down and are like, this is what I want. And then we are not willing to actually listen to each other and find a middle ground. And it would be really nice if we could get a 7-0 vote on the yield bill, which is a major bill.
It is a
And,
major bill.
but what I'm hearing is nobody, I mean, you're like, this is what I'm doing, and nobody is,
I think we're just throwing ideas
I'm
out
all
there.
for a compromise, so if there's time on the agenda, I would love to know what you're thinking of, Senator Hardy. I'm a big compromise middle ground guy, I try to be, so just tell me what you're thinking.
well, let's talk. I'd like that.
Okay, I would say you may need some time to think about that,
Yes.
and we'll talk about it. And the hallway conversations sometimes yield good results. And so does it being awake and not hungry, tired, or cranky. So,
Doing things in a rush. We have a look.
so you're not hungry, tired, or cranky.
Great. All right.
That's
Speak
good.
naturally. Think of something
Okay.
that's useful.
Tomorrow,
Well, I
this
have it.
gets voted, whether or not we're speaking to each other, because we still have to get miscellaneous tax out of here by
That-
Friday.
That's what I wanted to ask. If you guys are planning to do yield bill tomorrow, does that mean you're doing miscellaneous tax Friday? What's the,
We are doing as much as we can tomorrow. What have I got on my
You guys
agenda
work on
right
it?
now?
I know I've said I have to leave at 3 on Friday, I'm looking for
Capital.
the best, it must be
Okay.
Friday, so trying to be able to be here if I get to be.
All right, on Friday, let everyone know. Yeah,
Are we still,
I
needing
think
to be
we are
live?
out, we go offline. And